Stuck in a slump, can't seem to find a groove. Catch me out here chasing dreams, trying to make moves. Getting fucked by life every day, being screwed. I gotta win, cause so far all I done is lose. Trip of a lifetime, let's fucking go. To tie a ribbon on it, from this point forward, if you're a girl, I don't care about your shitty ass job or your stupid fucking name. All I want to know is what makes your pussy wet and the weirdest shit that turns you on. That right there is how the end of that bit goes. In what parallel universe is that shit not funny? Tony Hinchcliffe has got to be the most hating ass motherfucker in the history of the universe. At least when it comes to Stern Worm, he is. This is what he gave me. I guess it's like a little paperweight shaped like a bomb, and it says I bombed on Kill Tony. So fucking ridiculous. I didn't bomb on Kill Tony. Don't let Tony Hinchcliffe fool you. My bit was mad funny, and don't let him sour your taste of it. It's like going out to eat and everyone at the table is complaining about how bad the food is. It just makes it harder to digest. But anyone who doesn't think that bit is funny just doesn't get humor. I said my life is so gay I might as well be fucking dudes. How is that not funny? Do I think it's laugh out loud, crack the fuck up funny? No, but even though like I know this sounds like a cop-out, that's not really what I'm going for with my stand-up. I think it's weird when people crack up at stand-up comedy. Laughter in comedy clubs just looks and sounds like an overreaction to me. It sounds like laugh tracks on sitcoms sometimes. Like it feels contrived and artificial. For me personally, if I'm watching stand-up comedy, it's extremely rare that it gets me cracking up. Even if I like it and I think it's funny. If I think something's funny, that's exactly what it is. I just think it's funny and it makes me smile. But stand-up comedy rarely creates instinctual laughter out of me. It usually takes something in the moment that gets me actually cracking up. But I digest comedy the same way that Tony and the guest on Kill Tony do. Even when they really like a set, they rarely start cracking up. They smile during the set and afterwards they tell the bucket pull that they thought it was funny. And like when I do stand-up, if people are there, like obviously I prefer them laughing because crowd laughter is the standard. But I really do prefer just to get my shit off without people cracking up. What I prefer is the audience watches it kind of like a theater show. Laugh if it's instinctive, but don't force it just because you're at a comedy show and you think you're supposed to laugh. I was once having this conversation with a friend and he was like, yeah, but when you're rapping, you want a positive response, right? And I was like, yeah, I want them to like the verse and tell me afterwards that it was fire, but I think it's weird when someone's rapping and after every bar, the people listening are like, oh, that's what they do at rap battles. Like, I think that shit is so corny and over the top. And to me, that's the same shit that people are doing when they're cracking up at every joke inside comedy clubs. And I see it as the same thing as people screaming on roller coasters. When I go on a roller coaster, I just sit there. I don't scream. And it's one thing if it's like a child screaming going on their first ride, but adults will be on their favorite roller coaster that they've been on a zillion times, yet they're screaming the whole fucking ride. They're just doing that thing that people do. I just see it all as like a form of putting on. And this is one of the reasons why I'm not big into doing stand-up comedy. I'm not big into over-the-top laughter, so I don't like how everything is predicated on how much the audience laughs. But like I said earlier, I didn't think I bombed on Kill Tony, and that's because I think my set was funny and I had a clean delivery. The only reason I would say I bombed is because the audience didn't laugh, but in my opinion, there's not a direct correlation between bombing and audience laughter. I see bombing in 3 different ways: corny material or even like clunky material, blanking out without a clean recovery, or when somebody's like up there riffing and it's not going well. The only way I see the audience's reaction as the reason that the comedian is bombing is if the audience turns against the comedian, like they're visibly dissatisfied with the comedian's brand of comedy and the comedian just stays on script and doesn't get into the moment. But in regards to Tony seeing my set on Kill Tony as bombing, he said it probably as like a combination because the audience didn't laugh, and then he said I had no punchlines and no jokes. I know he said I had no punchlines. I think he also said I had no jokes. But like in the past 3 years, I've come to absolutely fucking hate jokes. What I've realized is in my life, not once has anyone ever asked to tell me a joke and it resulted in me laughing. I can't stand those people who always go around trying to tell people jokes. So if I don't like it when people do that shit in real life, then why would I find it funny when somebody stands on stage with the microphone and does it under the pretense that they're funny? It just makes me mad. And I undoubtedly agree that having jokes is the best way to get crowd laughter on Kill Tony, but I'd rather bomb with authentic material that's unique to myself that I think is funny opposed to trying to cater to what I think is going to work. Alright, so as a quote-unquote comedian, if you could even call me that, I'm proud of myself for not telling jokes, but I will acknowledge that you do need to have punchlines in your sets. And in reference to Tony saying I have no punchlines, like, I'll admit that even though I do think my bits are funny, to some degree they do lack distinctive punchlines. But there's a comedian who Tony praises on a weekly basis who also doesn't have distinctive punchlines, and that's Cam Patterson. He doesn't tell jokes or have punchlines, and I don't mind throwing Cam under the bus because I think he's hilarious, and I think he does comedy the way it's supposed to be done. He authentically creates, but he doesn't have hard-hitting punchlines. What makes Cam Patterson funny is that he's just naturally a funny person. He has what I think is the most important trait within a comedian, and that's comedic charisma. He's the type of person that the way he says stuff is just funny. He could be funny even when he's not trying to be funny, and in my opinion, that's who's funny in life. The people who make you crack up as soon as they start talking, not the people who go around telling jokes and always trying to make people laugh. Those people are insufferable and exhausting to be around. But week after week, Cam goes up on Kill Tony without clear punchlines, and Tony's always blown away by his sets. He does it again. And like, the point isn't to say how Cam has no punchlines, it's to highlight that Cam getting away with having no punchlines is inconsistent with Tony's critique of my sets, and Cam's evidence that you could still be funny without punchlines. And I'm definitely not trying to hate on Cam. I think he's mad funny, and that's why I don't mind throwing him under the bus to prove a point. And I'm also not trying to hate on Tony because I'm at the mercy of him. He holds the fate of my existence in his hands. He could hand me everything or assure me that's never going to happen. And it's not whether or not Joe Rogan will be obsessed with me. It's whether or not Tony Hinchcliffe brings him to my YouTube channel. In terms of Rogan, my only question is he going to be more obsessed with my music or with my podcast? In Rogan's universe, I'm the kid. It's like he manifested me into existence. But for Stern Worm, the path to Joe Rogan goes through Tony Hinchcliffe, and there's no way around it. At this point, if somehow I miraculously got to Rogan on my own, but I created a divide between me and Tony, Tony could still blackball me to Rogan. If Tony says don't fuck with him, then Rogan's not going to fuck with me no matter how much he likes me. And that's why, like, I'm really not trying to make it sound like I'm shitting on Tony Hinchcliffe on this podcast, because, like, I need him in my corner. Otherwise, like, I wouldn't give a fuck. But the reason I'm, like, kind of sliding him is because, like, I'm just trying to defend my set. I think it's funny. He said it's not funny. He's not going to convince me it's not funny. And that's the thing. Like, if I believe that my shit's not funny because Tony tells me it's not funny, but then other people, like, tell me they saw my set on Kill Tony, they thought it was hilarious, like, what am I supposed to believe? You know what I mean? And that's why what I have to do is just, I have to believe what I think is funny. You know what I mean? Like, you can't cater to what other people tell you is funny. And that's why I don't like when comedians say you find out what is funny when you're on stage. You could tell me you find out what works and what creates laughter when you're on stage, but you can't tell me you find out what's funny when you're on stage. And then, like, a couple other things about Tony's reaction to my bit. Maybe what I found to be, like, the most ridiculous thing that he said was, he said something like, after 3 years, that's the bit that you chose to do? But, like, I find that reaction to be so fucking ridiculous because, like, if I have that bit in my arsenal, how could I not do it on Kill Tony? That bit is the essence of what the show is, and doing a bit like that shows that I quote unquote get the show, and it gives him something to work with in the interview. Tony always appreciates when someone gives him something in their set for him to work with in the interview, and he always gives props to people who incorporate their real lives into their set. Even if I felt like I had bits that would generate more laughter, I would still choose that bit a zillion out of a zillion times because that's what makes sense to do on that stage. That bit is more tailored for a Kill Tony appearance than it is at a random open mic. And, like, another thing in regards to Tony's reaction being that that's a bad bit to choose after such a long hiatus, what's ironic is I had consciously thought the opposite to myself. I saw it as, like, at least I have some crazy ass shit to go up there with after it's been so long. If it was like 3 months after my last appearance, then I feel like the number one goal would be to go up there with something funny. But after 3 years, it's like I'd rather be memorable than be funny. I'd rather make a splash and do something that stands out, and lucky for me, I just naturally had that. And then, like, another thing that bothers me about how Tony came at me for my set is I even saw him once on Andrew Schultz's podcast complimenting Schultz for talking about his real life during his sets and basically saying that that's some next level shit. And incorporating your real life into the set is a piece of advice that all the comedians as guests on Kill Tony give to the bucket pools. They always say anyone could write jokes about jerking off, but try to write about your real life and what makes you unique. And when someone says something crazy and interesting during the interview, the guest always asks, why didn't you talk about that during your bit? And that's exactly what I did. And I don't do it because that's their advice. I do it because that's That's my artistic philosophy. What they say to do is just how I naturally create. When I'm creating stand-up comedy, I want to bottle up what's funny about my existence, my unique vantage point. And then the final thing that bothered me about Tony shitting on my bit is he's always applauding anybody who does self-deprecating humor. And whenever he does it, it's always somebody who does that same tired ass bullshit that everybody does in stand-up comedy. Let's get it out of the way with. I know what you're thinking. Why does he look like blah 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 mixed with blah 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 da 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 da? I'm so fucking sick of hearing that I look like jokes. He's a professional comedian, so I don't really mind using his name as an example. Jeff Ross just did this at the Kill Tony MSG episode when he did the set. He did something like, I know I look like Vin Diesel's personal trainer with AIDS. Like, in every joke he did, structure like that killed, because that type of joke always kills. But those like I look like jokes are so fucking tired that even when they are funny and accurate, because sometimes they are kind of funny, I still roll my eyes and I don't want to hear it. In 2024, doing that is as hack as it gets. And like, in my opinion, it's such a cop-out way to be self-deprecating. My bit is the most embarrassing shit that anybody could do. So instead of hiding it, I made a joke about it on stage. That's exactly what you're supposed to do to utilize these art forms as an outlet. It's so hard to talk about that type of stuff, so why not make it into a joke and do it on stage? Like, I think that that's what this shit is about. My motto has always been, I don't need to write jokes. My life is a joke. If anyone goes back and watches all 4 of my Kill Tony appearances, they'd see all my shit self-deprecating. Problem is, I got the self-deprecation part down. I just can't seem to get the funny part down. And then the other thing about Tony's reaction to me and why I'm sitting here like, yo, he's got to be fucking trolling me. He cut off my rap performance, insinuating that my shit was whack. And I've been on Kill Tony 4 times, and there's video evidence to prove that he cut me off rapping all 4 Kill Tony appearances. Yet I've never seen him cut off one other person who goes up there and says they could rap. And he's almost always blown away by anybody who raps on Kill Tony. But the fact that Tony Hinchcliffe hates on my raps is proof that his critique of me is unfair. How Tony responds to me when I'm up there is the perfect analogy for how life interacts with me. Everyone's always like extremely unimpressed by me no matter what I do. But here's what's ironic about like how I got the thing that like I bombed and how badly Tony clowned on me when I was up there. I was extremely happy with my overall performance. In terms of execution, I thought everything went perfectly. I'm still in the dark. Like, I haven't seen the episode yet. I'm recording this before it's released, so I don't know what it looks like, and I might cringe when I see it, but everything felt good when I was up there. But like, I've been dreading that moment for years. Other than trying to hook up with girls, that was the most pressure-filled moment of my life. I just wanted to get through it. I wasn't exactly looking forward to airing out my sexual futility and questionable sexuality on a public stage. So with that said, because of all the pressure and the magnitude of the moment for me, plus the fact that when I'm up at Kill Tony, like waiting to hear my name called, I'm sitting in the corner of a bar, lethargic as fuck, half asleep. I'm always thinking to myself, the last thing I'm in the mood to do right now is get up on Kill Tony and say I hooked up with the guy. So because of all that, I was extremely worried about how everything would go down when I got my name called. I can't control how Tony reacts to me, but I literally couldn't be happier with how I did up there. I just wanted to get it over with. I couldn't imagine executing in a way where I feel like it went down perfectly, but that's exactly what happened. If my shit's trash, then my shit's trash, but I'm not disappointed with how I did up there. Like, I didn't have a game plan and then walked away from it like, oh my god, I bombed. I fucked up the whole game plan. But in terms of like the comedy part, I haven't done stand-up in over a year. Mix that with how nervous I was for the moment, I thought for sure my voice was gonna be trembling during my set and ruin it. I think stand-up comedy is painful to watch if the comedian's noticeably nervous, but I don't know, it was weird. Like, I felt extremely comfortable during my minute. I still gotta see the film of it, but I felt like I took my time, sat in the pocket, and gave a crisp delivery. And then I was extremely happy with how the interview went. And that's the part I was really dreading, because the minute is prepared. The interview is unrehearsed and everything could go left. And there was so much pressure for me to say what I want to say that I thought there was a pretty decent chance that I might come off as incoherent up there. But I feel like it went relatively well, the interview. There were certain Mondays in the past where I've literally gone up to Kill Tony with a cheat sheet of notes in my pocket of stuff I want to talk about in the interview. It would not have gone well if I pulled out a sheet of notes when I was up there on stage. But I did it the best way. I figured instead of trying to force in what I want to say, I just answered whatever questions Tony asked me. And the podcast is the reason I was able to take that approach, because I knew I had this outlet. So I figured anything I didn't get to say out there, I could say here, which just took some of the pressure off of the moment for me to make certain points. And I'm much more comfortable talking here than on Kill Tony anyway. It's much more of a controlled environment, I'd say. Looking back on it, there was like two things that I didn't think of to say in the moment. Not points that I want to make when I went up there, but just responses to stuff that Tony said. First, Tony said he thought I looked different this time, and I was like, this is how I've always looked. But then when I was rewatching my last appearance a couple days ago, I noticed why I look different. I got a haircut right before this episode, and I rarely get haircuts right now because I only get haircuts when I visit my parents in Florida. So like if you see me fresh off of a haircut, I do look kind of different. And then I vividly remember Tony not only asking me for the name of the gay club that I went to, but for some reason he was pressing me for it. I should have been like, why do you want the name so badly? Are you looking for a new hangout spot? That shit would have been so funny, and that would have obviously killed in the moment. It's too late though. Like, unfortunately, I can't script life. And another thing that I didn't get to say when I was on stage was I'm hoping to start a podcast with Joe Rogan called Path of Destiny. I don't know if that's going to be happening anytime soon. But what's good is I did get to say a few things that I really want to say up there. The most important of that being mentioning the podcast, which I did on a couple occasions, which I'm really happy about. I did forget to say the name of the podcast, though. How could I forget to fucking say Trip of a Lifetime? And then if there's one point about sexuality that I wanted to make on stage, I got to make it, which is you don't get turned on when you feel pressure. Pressure blocks your arousal. And then the last thing that I was really happy that I got to mention on stage is my OnlyFans account, because I think that's the funniest shit in the history of the universe, that I have an OnlyFans account. It's way funnier than any joke that I could write. But also I want to draw attention to it so people check it out, and then going forward, any girls that I might hook up with have seen dick pics of mine. It'll help me feel less insecure, like I'm going to be a disappointment when I take my pants off. If they see my dick pics, then they know exactly what to expect, and they chose to be there. And if I hook up with guys going forward, I don't care what they think about my dick. I have a small dick, take it or leave it. So that covers the interview. And then the final part of the performance that I thought went well was my rapping. I've rapped a few times in my life with bands behind me, and I never like how it feels when I rap with the band behind me. I feel like the band drowns out my vocals, the tempo's always too fast, and the energy of the beat never feels right. But the beat that the band played was absolutely perfect. It was the first time I ever felt good rapping on top of a band, and I almost didn't even get a chance to rap. That would have been a fucking disaster if I didn't get to rap up there. The verse was so connected to everything I was trying to do up there. It helps me paint the picture. The thought of possibly getting thrown off stage before I got to spit my verse never even occurred to me. Luckily, like, he did let me linger around long enough to at least spit half the verse before he cut me off and got rid of me. And the first 8 bars of that verse are the reason that I picked it, and that's exactly what I got to spit. So other than the fact that it annoyed me getting cut off, I wasn't that mad that I got cut off because I rapped exactly what I wanted to. I kind of just like got in and out, the best way to do it sometimes. But what's like incredibly alarming to me is that Tony didn't even remember that I'm a rapper, or at least a self-proclaimed rapper. That caught me off guard. That's a terrible sign. That means I'm really not on his radar at all, and I'm beyond an afterthought to Kill Tony. But that's the one thing I really can't believe. If somebody told me a month ago, oh yeah, like your master plan is to get to Rogan going through Tony Hinchcliffe, well, he doesn't even fucking remember that you're a rapper, I would be like, there's no fucking way that's possible. If I knew the truth was that he didn't remember I'm a rapper, I would have been shell-shocked. I moved out of Austin. To balance it out though, the one good sign that everything I've been doing isn't all in vain is the introduction he gave me. He introduced me as a legend of the show, which I was surprised he gave me that much props. I know he likes to overhype people, but it's just a testament to how I'm making progress in his universe. And on each Kill Tony appearance of mine, my introduction gets progressively better, which is a sign of organic growth. I said from day one, like, all I need is to be a real person in Tony Hinchcliffe's universe. The longer he knows who I am, the better chance there is that he eventually brings Rogan to my YouTube channel. One thing that I did forget to mention when I was up there on stage was that I've been signing up trying to get back on Kill Tony for 3 years since my last appearance. And here's what's like absolutely fucking crazy. It was exactly 3 years to the week of my last bucket pull. The last episode that I got up there was on December 13th, 2021, and then this time it was December 9th. That morning I had actually realized, like, oh shit, I think this is like the anniversary week of my last bucket pull. That'd be crazy if I got up tonight. And then it happened. But like for the first 6 months after my last bucket pull, I felt mad pressure of the moment on the horizon, and I'd only sign up for Kill Tony occasionally. But for the past 2.5 years, I've been signing up for Kill Tony every single week. Basically, the only time I would miss a week was during Thanksgiving. But like I said, I wasn't signing up much for the first 6 months after my last bucket pull, and that's because, like, I hadn't done the gay shit yet that I talked about in the bit, but I knew on the next Kill Tony appearance, I was probably going to have to address the elephant in the room behind my existence. So because of how stressful that is and the fact that I didn't have a plan, I felt more pressure on the moment back then than when I actually got called. I used to go up there feeling naked, but like after I did what I talked about in the bit and obviously like creating the bit around it, I just felt much better about going up to Kill Tony knowing that I was taking control of the situation at least. Like I just felt much more ready to face the moment. But like Tony gets shocked when people say they've been signing up for like a year without getting pulled. For me, it was 2.5 years of going every week. I think I had the longest running streak out of anybody right now who signs up for Kill Tony, and there's more names in the bucket now than ever. Like there wasn't this many names in Los Angeles. There was like half of this. There was like 150 at most. Now there's almost 300. So like I may have had the longest strikeout streak on Kill Tony ever. It was probably like 120 weeks of striking out, but it felt like more. It literally felt like I went up there 1,000 times without getting picked. It felt like a past life when I was signing up at the Vulcan, and it really feels like a past life ever since the first time I was picked out of the bucket in Austin 3 years ago. The first time I was picked out of the bucket in Austin, I wasn't even really living here yet. I wasn't even in my actual apartment yet. My apartment like wasn't ready, so I was staying in an Airbnb that month. And then after that month ended, there was a month gap before my apartment was going to be ready, so I knew I was going back to stay with my parents in Florida for that month. So like the first time I got up on Kill Tony, it was really more like a vacation here opposed to like my life starting out here. And my Airbnb was in the University of Texas area, and it was like totally away from where my apartment is now. Like it just feels like it was like a different life. This really feels like the first time I'm living in Austin getting pulled out of the bucket on Kill Tony. This is the first time I left my apartment and came back. Like I can't fucking believe I got up on Kill Tony. But like here's the crazy thing about the first time I got up on Kill Tony in Austin. I went through a manic episode that started the day after I got picked out of the bucket. I was in another galaxy for the 2 weeks in between the appearance and the airing, and then I got facilitated for 10 days in like a mental hospital. I was in the mental facility when the episode aired. But so because of all that month felt like a figment of my imagination. It feels like nothing that happened that month was even real. So the point is, it just like really feels like a different life the last time I got up on Kill Tony. This really feels like the first time I got up in Austin, living here. But I will say, for like a multitude of different reasons, getting back up now is the absolute perfect timing. Like it couldn't have worked out any better in my opinion. I'd exponentially rather it have happened now than like shortly after my previous appearance. And it's ironic because like as of late, I've been thinking this would be the perfect time to get back up on Kill Tony. And then shortly after I started thinking that, it happened. I was actually just thinking that when I was visiting my parents for Thanksgiving. I was thinking when I get back to Austin, the time is now to get back on Kill Tony. And then I got pulled out of the bucket, literally my first episode back. For the past 5 years though, my life in every way, shape, or form revolves around Kill Tony. For everybody else out here, open mics as a whole is their main purpose. Kill Tony comes secondary. But for me, it's all about Kill Tony. Like I don't do stand up out here. Kill Tony is really the only reason why I live in Austin. I literally do nothing out here other than drive Uber Eats, work on my podcast, and sign up for Kill Tony. I will say though, like this is like a good place for me to live even if Kill Tony didn't exist, because rent's relatively cheap here for a city. It's a great place to drive Uber Eats, and I fucking love barbecue, so it does work out. But I'm blessed to have Kill Tony to revolve my life around, because without this, what am I supposed to revolve my life around? My job driving Uber Eats. People always talk about the mental health struggle, but it's so understated how important it is for your mental health to have something that drives you, that you could revolve your life around. Specifically when like it's a goal that you're pushing towards. It gives you a real sense of purpose. Without chasing the dream of quote unquote making it through Kill Tony, my life would be so fucking empty right now. Like obviously I have my music in the podcast, but it's the dream of creating a better existence that really drives me at this point. Yeah, I love having these outlets for self-expression, but at the end of the day, that doesn't quote unquote make me happy. I want to use it as a vehicle to create a better existence for myself. And because of Kill Tony, it's the first time I've ever felt like there might be light at the end of the tunnel. And sensing that opportunity inspired a bunch of my newer verses and is good for my mental health. And I would never started the podcast if it wasn't for Kill Tony. I couldn't start a podcast with no audience where I feel like I'm just talking to a brick wall. Like technically I can, but personally I can't. Kill Tony is the only outlet that's ever driven random traffic to my channel. And even though like the episodes I post right now only get like 50 clicks, when I put together episodes, I feel like eventually people are going to see it, and that's because of Kill Tony. And that hope is what drives me. Even if they don't stick around, at least I know that the podcast is going to be visible on the surface the next time I get up on Kill Tony. So when I record, it's because of Kill Tony that I'm able to narrate the episodes as if the audience is already there, even though like I know nobody's watching. I talk on the podcast like the audience is already here, and I wouldn't be able to do that if it wasn't for Kill Tony, because I would have known that there is no fucking audience coming. Now, like, there's probably not an audience coming, but who knows? Like, at least I have a chance of it. And like another thing is knowing that any potential audience is undoubtedly coming from Kill Tony is what allows me to make Kill Tony references like it's common knowledge, because 100% of my viewership will be familiar with Kill Tony. So that gives me the ability to talk on the podcast about everything the way I want it, because anyone watching is going to know what I'm talking about when I make a reference about a golden ticket winner. But like, if I didn't have the Kill Tony audience, then I wouldn't be able to make those references. But because that's the audience that might be tapping in, I know we're on the same page. Even if I can't surface myself, all I want is to feel like I got my fair shot. And through Kill Tony, I feel like I'm getting that. But like, even if I don't quote unquote make it through Kill Tony, it at least gives my voice a wider reach and gives me an ounce of hope that I'm like pushing towards something. And Kill Tony serves as more than just like an outlet for me to try to quote unquote make it. Like, I take this opportunity that I have on Kill Tony for granted, but I'm blessed to have it to air out my pressure and straighten out my existence. Even if straighten out my existence means living a gay lifestyle, my progress as a human being has been paralyzed by pressure, and because I knew I'd have to confront it all on stage, Kill Tony's forced me into the process of trying to push through everything. I would have never gone through with what I did if I didn't know I was going to have an honest conversation about my sex life on a very public stage. And I think going through what I did and wearing it on my sleeve is essential for my growth as a human being. It starts the process of airing out my internal pressure and decompressing my paralyzed existence. Like, as important for my life as it is to get to Joe Rogan, facing my issues and alleviating internal pressure is possibly somehow even more important than getting to Rogan. Before I discovered Kill Tony, the thought of like actually hooking up with a guy was unimaginable, and even more unimaginable than that was doing it and then talking about it on a public stage. But like, now I could never imagine living a life where I didn't get to do it. Like, doing something like this is the only way I could see myself alleviating the internal pressure I feel sexually. This has really become like a therapeutic process that it feels like the universe is carved out for me. But like, I believe pressure is real and it doesn't just disappear. You have to either gradually dissipate the pressure or somehow air it out. And Kill Tony allows me to do the latter and kind of do it on my own terms. Never at any point throughout human history could you do something like this. It's such a unique opportunity. And the beauty of the internet is this will reach most people that I've ever known and anybody that I might possibly meet going forward. So now like, I truly feel like my authentic self. But like, I like putting this out for everybody that I've ever known, because like, then I feel like I'm good. Like, I could do whatever I want to do going forward and not feel like I'm living a lie. It eats me alive if I feel like to some degree that I'm living a lie. Transparency is what allows me to feel comfortable in my skin. But like, for the master plan to come into fruition, I'm not gonna lie, I need more to come from this. I need to spawn myself a new existence that stems from this and Stern Worm as an artist. Without that, I won't say everything is all in vain, because it's not, but it won't have the full effect if I can't open up my universe through this. But basically, for all of this to come into fruition, it comes down to one fact, and that's I gotta get to Rogan. My existence will only be salvaged if I get to Rogan, and that's all there is to it. But if I do, that's the final piece of the puzzle to bring everything to life. And like I think I just alluded to a minute ago, even if I don't spawn a new existence out of this and I continue existing how I do for the rest of my life, it's not all in vain. Through this process, I still alleviated a lot of internal pressure, and ultimately I feel a lot better about myself. But overall, like, I'm on cloud 9 even if nothing comes from this. I'm so happy to finally get through everything. I accomplished what I set out to do, and I lifted an immense burden of pressure off of my existence. And now going forward, signing up for Kill Tony is fucking stressless. When I'd wake up Monday mornings, I'd feel the weight of the world on my shoulders. Literally, the last thing I want to be doing that night was getting up on Kill Tony. It's been 3 years since my last appearance, and every time they come over to the bar where we're at to announce the name of the next bucket pool, my body still drops. And every time I think to myself, any name but Stern Worm, any name but Stern Worm. Tony said before, it gets real quick, talking about like your name getting called. And he's right, like, you gotta switch up your mentality quickly and get into the zone. But when I heard my name called, I couldn't believe that was the moment it was actually about to happen. I just wanted to skate out the back door and never come back to Kill Tony. But I'm just so relieved to be on the other side of it. I just feel fulfilled that I got through everything. I finally accomplished what I set out to do. I got through the moment that I was dreading more than anything. And now I feel like immense burden of pressure lifted off my shoulders. But at least I got it over with, and now I'm on the other side of it. But possibly the best part about getting picked is now I don't have to fucking drag myself to the HEB Center in fucking Cedar Park for like a 5-hour process 2 nights in a row. I was not trying to do that shit again this year, and there's no way I'm doing that shit now. Now I'm just enjoying the time in between the Kill Tony appearance and when it airs. It's the calm before the storm. Even if the storm is just some short-term traffic to my YouTube channel, I'll take it. It's better than nothing. This whole thing happening just like totally invigorated me with energy. Like the day after I got on Kill Tony, I ended up sitting in an hour and 45 minutes worth of traffic because of the fucking stupid ass Trail of Lights festival in Zilker Park that's right by my apartment. I sat in an hour and 45 minutes worth of traffic and made $6 fucking dollars because of all that bullshit. When that was all going on, I was basically on suicide watch. The only thing getting me through it was I kept thinking to myself, it's all good. You just got up on Kill Tony. It's all good. You just got up on Kill Tony. But the Kill Tony episode airs 2 days before Christmas. I have a few long-standing Christmas traditions, and this year, because I just got up on Kill Tony, I'm extremely excited about one of them. One of my Christmas traditions, it's not necessarily the one I'm excited for, but I am always obviously excited for this one, and that's to watch Jingle All the Way, the movie. That movie's my shit, and I'm a sucker for movies that have like the Christmas spirit in it. And then I have 2 main traditions that unfortunately contradict each other, so every year I could only do one of the 2. It kind of depends on what my financial situation is that year when Christmas comes around. My favorite tradition is to bet $1,000 on every NBA Christmas Day basketball game while drinking all day and getting wasted. But I'm so far removed from betting right now that that's not even an option. Like, I'm in no financial situation to carry on that tradition this year. But like, so my other Christmas tradition is the one that I'm definitely doing this year, and like I alluded to before, it's the one that I'm really excited about, and that's eating 1/8 of mushrooms. I always plan on tripping during this 2-week period in between my Kill Tony appearance and when the episode airs. I figured the universe would probably have some sort of message for me, but the fact that Christmas is 2 days after the episode airing, it only makes sense to wait a few more days and just trip on Christmas. And it's good because then I don't have to sacrifice a day of work just to trip. Yeah, so that's basically everything I want to go over. I'll put together another episode, another podcast episode once the Kill Tony episode airs, and I've seen it and digested it, and I'll put out like a podcast in response to watching it. But now everything is all out of my hands. I did my part. All I could do now is watch the episode and see where everything goes from here. Probably nowhere. But at minimum, at least I know there's undoubtedly going to be a surplus of traffic to my YouTube channel, and that's a hit of excitement, specifically because they're going to be seeing the podcast. But like, I can't stress enough, I'm not here for the love of rapping, for the love of podcasting, or for the love of comedy. I want one thing right now, and that's clout. My mind frame is unapologetically that of the ultimate clout chaser. I have one goal, and that's to become famous. Fuck what you heard. Star One, trip of a lifetime. Let's fucking go.